All right, recordings in progress. So this is our class today is April 2nd, Wednesday class of Who We Are. And we're going to pick up where we left off. And just as a reminder, um, every scripture that I read in connection to what what we'll be talking about, because the Bible is our text, will be coming from the New King James Version, and I omit the italic. And the reason why I omit the italic is because it was added in my Bible. The word was added at a later date, after the original translations from the Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, right? Okay, so just want to make sure we understand that. So I am reading from the New King James Version. And so we're going to pick up where we left off last week. And so last week we talked about the splitting of the kingdoms. And we also had an understanding of why the kingdom split, right? According to the disobedience of Solomon, King Solomon. And we read that in 1 King chapter 11. And that was coming from 1 King chapter 11, verses 1 through 13. And so that was the reason why God told Solomon that he was going to split the kingdoms, because of his disobedience. And what was his disobedience? He began to idol worship, okay? And so what I would like to reiterate is the purpose of this class is understanding who we are. And that's the name of the class, Who We Are, and the 400 years. And so we're talking about who we are, me, you. If you are identified by the color of your skin, then that's what this is about, who we are. And the 400 years come from the timeline from when the first Negroes, Negros, were brought over to the Americas, right? From Negro land, Nagricia, and Africa. And so they were brought over to the Americas, which was at that time known as North and South America. And in the beginning of this class, we kind of did the breakdown of North and South America, the meanings before they became Americas, North and South America, the names, what they were called before that, right? And so that's what this class is about. It's not about, oh, I'm a Black Hebrew or anything like that, or I'm the true Israelites, or I am a part of the missing tribe of Israel. God didn't miss anything. There's nothing missing. There's absolutely nothing missing. So we are not the missing tribe of Israel. We're part of the tribes of Israel. It's not a missing tribe. There was 12 tribes that came out of the son of Israel. So the 12 tribes of Israel, and he also had a daughter. And out of those 12 tribes is where we come from. So identifying who we are as, children of God, as his chosen, his peculiar, and his royal priesthood. Okay, his chosen generation, his peculiar people, and his royal priesthood. So that's what this class is about. And so and the reason why I am saying it is because I received some comments about, oh, well, we're the real Black, Israelite, or we're the missing tribe. That's not what this is about. And that's not what I am saying. I am going strictly by scripture, and I am connecting the dots so that we can understand who we are as a people, where we come from, and then connecting us back to our roots. That's what this class is about. And so I just want to make sure I made that clear, because when they watch the videos, they can understand, okay, and then they can think twice before they, leave a comment or what have you. So with that being said, we talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, the split. So last week we talked about the splitting and how nine tribes went over to the northern kingdom, which is the kingdom of Israel. And then we have the two that went over to the southern kingdom, which was the kingdom of Judah. And so what about, we said, Samantha, you said Israel had 13 kids, right? And so the daughter Dinah, her seed goes over, her descendants went over to the northern kingdom. And Levi, the tribe of Levi, they were in between. They were in between. So, and we also read where there was no inheritance, right? And we talked, because last week we kind of touched on picking up of the division of the lands. And so I also stated that we're going to do like a breakdown of the division of the lands, and we're going to show some connections there, right? And so we just wanted to get an understanding. And we also want, tonight we're going to show the breakdown of why the Semitics, as they would say, are the only ones that came over to the Americas. So we're from the Semitics. And what does that come from? If we go to Genesis chapter 10, verses, we talk about in Genesis chapter 10, we talk about, it reads the three sons, it talks about the three sons of Noah. And those three sons are the Hamites, the Semites, which is, and the Japhethites. So it's Ham, Shem is the way we read it in the scripture, and Japheth, or Japheth, if you want to say, but it's Japheth. So, so we're looking at the three sons, and so we're talking, when they say the Semitics, then they're talking about the descendants of Shem, and his name is actually pronounced Sem in Hebrew. And so that's where the term Semitic come from. And then we also have the term Hamitic, which comes from the sons, the descendants of Ham. So we're going to get into that, and I am going to dispute that. And the reason why I'm going to dispute that is because we're going to do the breakdown of those 12 sons plus the daughter. So Israel, who is Jacob, had 13 children, 12 sons and 1 daughter. So we're going to do the breakdown, and then we're going to get into talking about the divisions of the land and where they settled after they crossed over into the promised land. And also reiterating that when the children of Israel were down in Egypt, during that time, they were not identified as Jews. So I just want to make sure that we also reiterate that they were not identified as Jews. They were identified as the Ben Israel, which is Israel, his name. So the children of Israel, the sons of Israel, and Hebrews. That's what they were identified as when they were in Egypt. They were not identified as Jews. So there we know. And then I also don't want to say it again, that when, you know, the patriarch, which is Abraham, right? Because God made a promise with Abraham, a covenant within himself for Abraham, and that's in Genesis chapter 15, right? And I will show the breakdown of that since I mentioned it. He talks about, you have Abraham, Isaac, and then you have Jacob, who is Israel. And so Abraham, before the children of Israel crossed over into the promised land, Abraham was already dead. So he was never identified as a Jew. In scripture, he is only identified as a Hebrew, and we read that in our lesson last week. And so we want to make sure that there's an understanding of the term Jew, where it comes from, Hebrew, who are the real Hebrews? That's who they are, the nation, the Hebrews, and also the Gentiles. So disputing that the Gentiles are identified as the descendants of Japheth, and also connecting them to the continent, which is Europe. The descendants of Ham, connecting them to the continent of Africa. The descendants of Shem, connecting them to the continent of Arabia, and later changed to Asia. So you have the 3 largest continents, the 3 sons of Noah, and where they settled after the flood. And so all of this happens after the flood. So we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson, the breakdown, and I'm going to share something with you that's very interesting, because just getting a better understanding of scripture, right? Okay. And so the breakdown of the sons and who their mothers were, that's what we're going to talk about. And so we can find that, as I mentioned, the splitting of the tribes, the sons, which we mentioned, the 12 sons of Israel plus the 1 daughter, right? And so we're going to go here and we're going to do a breakdown. And I'm going to just read this real quick because I think it's very important for us to get this understanding. Coming from Genesis chapter 29, and I am going to read verses 20 through 35 in the New King James Version of the Bible, omitting the italic. And so let's get into the reading, and then I'm going to show you something, and we'll do the breakdown. Okay. And I'm also going to share, I'm going to share an image with you to show you how we're going to connect those dots together. Okay. So Genesis chapter 29, and I am reading verses. I'm going to start at verse, actually, I'm going to do verses 15 through 30. So 15 through 30. And it said, then Laban said to Jacob, because you, my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages. Now Laban had two daughters, the name of the elder Leah, the name of the younger Rachel. Leah's eyes delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah and his daughter Leah a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it Leah, and he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? And Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Then also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban still another 7 years. Now I want to explain something to you. Jacob was given Rachel 7 years and 7 days after serving his uncle, Laban. Laban was his uncle, and I'm going to show you that when I show you the image, right? Because in scripture it says here that when he during the feast, and when Jacob went into the tent, he laid with Leah. He didn't know it was Leah. He thought it was Rachel. And then the next morning he realized it was Leah, and he went to Laban and he said, what's going on? And he was like, well, it's customary for me to give you the oldest one first. And then he tells him, he says, fulfill her 7 days according to their custom, her week, which is 7 days, and then I'll give you the next one. Okay. And then after that, can you stay with me? So Jacob decided to allow the 7 days, for Leah's week to be filled. And then he was given Rachel. Now, at that moment, because of the plan, he said, okay, fine. So Laban asked him to stay with him. And the reason why he asked him to stay was because Jacob made Laban, and if you could read the story in Genesis 29, he became very prosperous while Jacob was there working with him in those 7 years. So in other words, he asked him, can you stay with me another 7 years so that, you know, because he wanted him to continue to help him prosper. And so we see here that he worked an additional 7 years after he was given Rachel. He didn't work for another 7 years and then was given Rachel. He was given Rachel 7 days after he fulfilled the 7 years and he was wedded to Leah, and he consummated their marriage, their relationship, so to speak, their marriage. And then he later found, because his uncle did not tell him that I'm giving you the oldest one first. He was thinking that the uncle was giving him the younger one, right? And so what I have heard countless times, teachers have theorized that Jacob, what Jacob did to Esau, his uncle did to him, because we know that Jacob deceived his father to receive Esau's blessing, right? And so in other words, it's like karma, saying that, you know, Laban did the same thing to Jacob. He deceived him by giving him Rachel first instead of, by giving him Leah first instead of Rachel. Okay. And so they always say, oh, well, you know what goes around, come around. That's what karma means. But in actuality, Jacob did not work 7 years, an additional 7 years for Rachel. He worked 7 years and 7 days. Then he was given Rachel, but then he agreed to stay with his uncle another 7 years. So that was kind of like a business deal, because he was helping his uncle prosper. He was helping him prosper in the land with his herds and all of that good stuff. So summarizing the story, that's what happened. So we have been taught that he worked 14 years for Rachel. He worked 7 years, got Leah, and then worked another 7 years and then got Rachel. No, he got Rachel 7 years and 7 days. Okay. And why is that important? Because in the scripture, it says here that Laban gave his daughter Leah a maid, and he gave his daughter Rachel a maid. And so the maid that he gave to Rachel was Bilhah, and the maid that he gave to Leah was Zilpah. Why is that important, Samantha? Let's break it down, okay? And I am going to make sure I have this information correct for you. So what we're going to do with the breakdown, and what I'm doing right now is disputing when the saying that the ones who came from the 400 years who were brought over to the Americas are we're from the tribe of Sem. Okay. So if we're from the tribe of Sem, that means that you're not including the ones that came from the tribe of Ham. So they're saying that it's the Semitic. We're from the Semitic, we're the descendants of Sem. Okay. Well, let's break that down. How are we going to do that? Jacob had 12 sons. So we're going to go from the oldest all the way down to the youngest. Okay. And then we're going to do the breakdown. And let me show you something here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my map. My image that I have, to make sure that, you all are able to see it as well. So, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up because I'm going to explain something to you. Let's see. We're talking about the genealogy. So this is the image of the genealogy of Abraham. Okay. And let me go ahead and pull that up, and I'm going to share my screen. And while that's coming up, I want you to keep in mind that Laban gave his two daughters the maids, and then they also became Jacob's wives. Talk about that. And how did they become his wife? Because you go to this, okay, I'm going to push this here. so that I can my screen. I want you all to see this. Let me go ahead and share real quick. Okay, and if someone can let me know if you can see the screen. And I know that with me teaching, you may or may not be able to see this because I have pinned myself. So if someone can let me know, come off mute and just let me know that you can see or or give me a thumbs up.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, so here we have the genealogy of Abraham. And as you can see here, you have Abraham, and Abraham was married to Sarah. And with that, they had Isaac, and then Isaac was married to Rebecca, right? So we see Rebecca here in red. So if you go back up to Abraham and go over, Abraham comes from Terah, right? And then he had Nahor, and Nahor was married to Milcah, and they had these children here. And then you have this child here, Bethuel, and Bethuel had Rebecca and Laban. Okay, and so with that, you have Rebecca and Laban, and then down here, you have Rachel, you have Leah, Rachel, and Bilhah. And excuse me, Zilpah, Leah, Rachel, and Bilhah. Right? And then here, as you can see, if you go back here, Isaac and Rebecca had Jacob. And here are the scriptures. So if you all, want me to send this over to you so you can read the stories, just let me know. You can text me or drop it in the chat and I'll send it to you. So you have here Jacob, who is Israel, and then his 12 sons, one, and then his daughter, right? Okay. So you have the daughter here in red, Dinah. So you have Jacob with Zilpah, Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and then the children that he had. So let's do this breakdown. So then all of them here are the tribes of Israel. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And let's do the breakdown. So as you saw in the image, Terah, Rachel, and Laban comes from Terah, who is from the tribe of Shem. He's not a tribe, but he's a descendant of Shem. Okay, so he's a descendant of Shem because Abraham is a descendant of Shem, and so that means that Laban is a Semite. He's a Semitic, right? He's a Shemite, and so you have the Hamites. I'm going to use that term, and then you have the Shemites, and you have the Japhethites. So we're talking about the Hamites and the Shemites tonight. Okay, what am I? And so Laban comes from Terah. He comes from Nahor, and then he's a descendant of Nahor. So he is a Shemite. He's a Semite, right? And then he had Leah and Rachel. So Leah and Rachel are Shemites. Now let's talk about Zilpah and Bilhah, right? And so I'm going to go here, looking at where they come from. And where do we get this from? And that's why I say it's always good to go back and look at the scriptures. And understand that there are missing books of the Bible. Okay, there are missing books of the Bible. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. There aren't any missing books of the Bible because God strategically put the books in the Bible the way he wanted to. But we do understand that there are other, books out there, such as the Maccabees, and also we have the letter of Naphtali. We have the book of Jasher. We have the Apocrypha. So we have different, books also that connects these things. And we know that this is true because in Joshua, and you can Google this, it actually says, is this not mentioned in the book of Jasher? And so God actually says this to Joshua in the book of Joshua. Is this not mentioned in the book of Jasher? Okay. And so according to Naphtali, who is, according to his notes, the notes of Naphtali, he did the connections of the two maids, Zilpah and Bilhah. And so their parents were called Rotheus and Iunis. I think that's the correct pronunciation of her name. And they are slaves. They were Laban's slaves. They were Laban's slaves, and they were Egyptians. Okay, so he has slaves that were Egyptian, and they're the parents of Zilpah and Bilhah. Okay, and so who are the Egyptians? As we stated, according to Genesis chapter 10 and verse 6, it says, now these are the descendants of Ham. It says, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And so we know that Mizraim is Egypt. His descendants are the Egyptians. And how do we know this? Because when we looked at the map at the beginning of the class, when we were looking at the maps with after the flood, we were able to identify the Egyptians. So the Egyptians come from Mizraim because his name means Egypt. And he is the son of Ham. So how can we say that it's only the Semitics? Then in that case, you're excluding the sons that came from the Egyptian maids. Okay, so let's do this breakdown. So in order, according to I want to say this also to explain that identifying Leah and Rachel as Semitic, and so they were married to Jacob, and then identifying Bilhah and Zilpah as Hamitic. That's what I'm going to do right now to do the breakdown. Leah and Rachel is Semitic, so they're Shemites, and Bilhah and Zilpah are Hamitic, they're Hamites, okay? And so the first son was born to Leah, which is Reuben. That means that he was Semitic. Why? Because Jacob and Leah are Semitic, they're Shemites. And then the second son was Simeon. Leah had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. So all four of those sons are Shemites. They're Semitic because Leah and Jacob are Shemites, right? Okay. Now, after Leah had Judah, then the next son that comes into place was born to one of the maids. And so according to the Midrash, which is a Jewish rabbinic literature that interprets, and I'm reading, interprets and elaborates upon biblical texts, often using stories and to explore deeper meanings and insights. So the Midrash is actually come from the root word called Daresh, which means to inquire or to search something carefully, okay? And so according to the Midrash, Hagar was an Egyptian, and she was a daughter of Pharaoh. And so Abraham was married to Hagar, and they had Ishmael. And so where does it connect? Because the parents of Zilpah and Bilhah are descendants of Ishmael. So if Hagar is an Egyptian, Ishmael is part Egyptian and part Hebrew, because that's what Abraham was. He was a Hebrew. He wasn't a Jew. He was a Hebrew. And so let's say, and he's a descendant of Shem. Hagar is a descendant of Ham. Abraham is a descendant of Shem. So you still have the Hamites and the Shemites right there. So Zilpah and Bilhah are descendants of Ishmael, the first son of Abraham. We know he had Isaac, so we're talking about the first son of Abraham that he had from the Egyptian woman Hagar. Okay, and so the next son after Leah gave birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Bilhah had Dan, and Dan is Shemite and Hamite, because Jacob is a Shemite, Bilhah is a Hamite. And then she gave birth to Naphtali. So Naphtali is Semitic and Hamitic. And then you have the next sons that were born to Jacob are also born by the other maid, Zilpah. So you have Gad and Asher. So that means that Gad and Asher were Semitic, Hamitic, Shemite, Hamite. And after those sons were born, Leah, she gave birth again to Issachar, Semite, Zebulun, Semite, her daughter Dinah, Semite. Then Rachel gave birth to the last two, which was Joseph and Benjamin, and they are Semites. So the reason why I say that I dispute that is because when the children of Israel went over into Negro land, after not all of them went, but there is nowhere in the Bible or in history or anywhere that identifies exactly who went over to when they left Jerusalem and went over into Africa and were in Negro land. Okay, remember we talked about that in the beginning of the class. I showed you the map of that. And so there's nowhere that specifically states that, oh, it was only the tribe of Judah that went. If that's the case, then it is true. But that is not the case, because when they fled, it said the children of Israel fled over. They left. They didn't return back to Jerusalem after they came out of captivity with the Babylonians. They did not return. Over 1 million of them went over to Africa and dwelt in Negro land. So there's nowhere that states it was only the tribe of Judah, or it was only the tribe of Benjamin, or only the tribe of Joseph, because then you can say that we're the Semitics, but that's not true. It's absolutely not true, because we cannot identify who were all included out of the children of Israel that went over to Negro land. So I dispute that. Saying all that to say that, in my opinion, Samantha, that it was both the Hamitics and the Semitics. And the reason why I say that is because, as we have just identified here, doing a breakdown of the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Israel plus his daughter, and who the mother is, and linking them up to who they are descendants of. So I have to dispute that. It's not just the Semitics. We're not just the descendants of Shem. We're also descendants of Ham. Also descendants of Ham. Now, unless someone can tell me that they have proof of that, then I will gladly stand up and say I was wrong. I have no problem with that. But according to my research and according to the scripture, they cannot distinguish which ones of the tribes actually went over to Negro land, Nagrisha, over in Africa. Cannot. Which is, to me, I'm like, wow, really? So I dispute that. And if you want to dig in a little deeper with that, you can call me and let me know, hey, I want, if you can help me understand, something else. I don't understand this part, but if you can break it down, I will gladly do so. But just wanted to make sure that we understand that is absolutely not true. It was the children of Israel that were brought over to the Americas on ships by the descendants of Japheth, the Europeans, and sold into slavery. The 13 children of Jacob are from both sons, the two sons of Noah, which is Ham and Shem. They're descendants of Ham and Shem, and that's it. And that's according to scripture. As we read it here, connecting the dots is according to scripture. So that's the breakdown of those sons. And so I wanted to make sure that we had an understanding of that, because now we can go into the divisions of the land, right? What happened to the children of Israel, because this is going to help us. It's going to lead us up to when they actually did not return back over to Jerusalem. Because at this time, what we're talking about is when the children of Israel, when they crossed over into the promised land, and then when they were taken into captivity, and for the 1 million, the ones that was over 1 million that let me not say that did not return to Jerusalem, Israel did not return to Jerusalem, but went over to Negro land. And then they were brought over to the Americas. So that's what we're leading up to. So that's what we wanted. So this is kind of giving us a little, a background understanding and a breakdown of, what happened. So what we're going to do is next week, because it's 6:44, next week we're going to get into next week we're going to go into 1 Kings chapter 12, and I believe I'm just going to grab some of the scriptures from 1 Kings chapter 12 through chapter 16, and we're going to actually look at the breakdown of the land of, the land when the children of Israel crossed over into the promised land, and when the land, the divisions of the land, and also connecting that to the cross. And I also, so that concludes our lesson for tonight. I wanted to do the breakdown of the sons, and then, so next week we're going to talk about the division of the land. But what I want to do right now is I try to, because I mentioned last week that I was going to share the Hebrew alphabet with you, and that's what I'm going to do. So if you are interested in receiving that, text me and I will send that over. I'll send that information over to you. And I think you can text me your email address, and then I will email that information over to you. And so let me just kind of, let me share my screen one more time, and I'm going to show you the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, because then we're going to go into the discussion. So I'm going to show you the alphabet, and then I'm going to, if you all want, I took one scripture, one passage in the Bible, and then did the breakdown of just one line of that to kind of show you all connecting the alphabet to the scripture. And because I mentioned to you all that the alphabet, everything points back to God. And so I want to show you all that breakdown. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.